Okay, I'll just put on my video for a second here just to be able to say hello to everyone in Ethiopia. It's a privilege to be with you today during this Inception seminar. And for the purpose of ensuring clearer communication, I will put off my video during the presentation, but I'm honored to be presenting to you the work that we are doing in Work Package 3. And if Alemu, you could take me to the next slide, please. I want to pick up from where the one previously, yes, I want to pick up from where my colleague Caleb left us. I just want to emphasize that we are definitely looking at a food systems approach. And I think it is important for us as a project, but also as all the stakeholders who are with us today to really ask ourselves a few questions in terms of how do we ensure that the consumer is getting a quality diet. But I also want to throw the question back to the consumer here, because we have to realize that the systems that exist are sometimes driven by what the consumers want. And unfortunately, sometimes what the consumers want may ignore what is important. For example, our indigenous African crops sometimes have been thought of to be crops that should be utilized by the lower class, but we want to say that, hey, these crops have a lot of potential. I want to begin also by saying I was visiting South Africa, I was also visiting Kenya, and I usually go to the markets and I look at what is available. And to my surprise, I was finding rye products based on rye, which I know we do not produce in Kenya, for example. And I asked myself the question, why not millet or sorghum products? And I'm not talking about flour, I'm talking about value-added products from bread, for example, but it could also be pasta, it could be many other things. So I feel definitely in the future, we also need to work with our consumers so that they can be able to acknowledge and appreciate the local crops. And this again is at the heart of the InnoFoodAfrica project. So again, not looking at the science itself and what is behind the drivers of the food system, but really thinking about, hey, how can we work with our consumers to be able to create a momentum that will ensure sustainability in the African food system. And having said that, I have put an arrow which shows that from the agricultural production, we have various layers that we need to work through, ensuring the environment is kept to its best. So sustainability, as was expressed by the director of Harari very nicely, ensuring sustainability so that our children, of course, will also enjoy the environment that we have, and also going to the consumers. And I'm very grateful that we have a dynamic team of researchers in several work packages who are, of course, working together to ensure that we move forward through these layers in a sustainable way. Please take me to the next slide. And our overall aim in Work Package 3, in the larger picture, which I, of course, mentioned, we have a food system and we know that we want to ensure quality diet, is we are going down to the starting point, looking at the farmer and asking ourselves, how can we improve the farmer's primary production processes? How can we increase the food diversity by what is happening at the farm? How can we boost productivity and marketability? How can we support the small scale farmers? And I like what was said by the director of Harari, that sometimes a lot of interventions may not reach the small farmer because of the requirements. But in this project, we want to really focus on the small scale farmers, ensuring that they are with us along the way. And as also was said, helping them also be part of the value chain is going to be a very, very important part of what we are doing. And I believe will give them a stronger role, which they already have at the moment in terms of food production, but they will have a stronger role and have more access to finances. Our approach is through our farmer participatory research, and I will be telling more about that. Next slide, please. And I want you to focus on the ladies that you can see on the picture here. And I believe that you will all agree with me, whether they were in Ethiopia, South Africa, Kenya, or Uganda, that they are not looking for more work. They're not looking to be going to the farm to do much more work. They're looking for more efficiency. They're looking for more finances to reach them so that they can also be able to enjoy with their families. And so all our interventions will be taking into account what is happening, how they are managing. We want to promote the modern crops, modern cultivars. We want to promote better management practices, better climate smart solutions, but we also want to ensure that they have improved yield, they have increased income, and they also must have reduced loss and waste. It would be futile for us to only look at improving yield, yet losing it all before it gets to the market. And again, as was nicely expressed by my colleague, Dr. Magutu, we are going to be looking at how to ensure through the market resource centers, the farmers have the best information as to how to ensure their products are reaching the consumers and they are getting the best prices, ensuring that they are not exploited by the middlemen, for example. We also want to acknowledge that they are enabling factors. There is credit. Our project does not give credit to the farmers, for example, but we want to look at the systems, the business models that can be able to ensure that the farmers have access to the credit or access to inputs or access to technologies which they may not at the moment afford. And one of the things that we certainly want to look at is digital tools. And these are tools that we know are commonly now becoming really important in ensuring products or the crops are reaching the market in an efficient way. And we know that a lot of farmers, even the small farmers, have phones, for example, but we want to be able to see how can we ensure the smallholder farmers can access the digital tools. And this is where, again, we want to emphasize the youth. We want to include the youth in the work that we are doing because they are more active on social media and utilizing of digital tools, and hopefully they can be the ones who then see the value of utilizing these tools and hopefully even helping their parents, for example, if they are working or if they are part of a farming family, for example. So again, we need to ensure that the youth value agriculture and don't look at just leaving their parents, but they can value it and they can see this being a potential business. And I believe that is already happening in Africa. A lot of youth are at the moment investing in farming because there is a huge potential and we have to work with them. On the next slide, you can see the crops that have been chosen. This has already been said, for example, in the case of Ethiopia, as was shown by my colleague, Dr. Magutu, but you can see for other countries, for example, if we look at Uganda, where Makerere University and Kolika are the main partners. They will be working with finger millet, sorghum, cowpeas, sweet potato, and banana. If we go down to South Africa in green, you can see that they will be working with cowpea, bambara groundnut, and orange fleshed sweet potato, and maize there in red because maize is well produced in South Africa. So again, we're not going to be doing a FPR for that, but more looking at how are the smallholder farmers managing and what can be done, what improvements can be done. In Kenya, you can see there is Africa Harvest and Chuka University focusing on finger millets, amaranth, cowpea, and orange fleshed sweet potato. And I have stars on amaranth and cowpea because we also want to realize that they can be used as the leaves from these plants can be used as vegetables, and also the grain can be then used as a grain. So we want to make sure that we utilize the crop in the best way possible. And of course, that is a challenge because then if you're growing for vegetables, then you have to utilize a different system. If you take me back, Alemo, previous slide, please. Yes. And then Arari was teff, maize, faba bean, and the orange flesh sweet potato. And on this part, we are privileged as the University of Helsinki to really be able to take the research that has been carried out here back to Ethiopia. And my colleague Kifle will, I will give him a chance to say a few words on that later. Next slide. Okay, our work package has 4 tasks, and the first one really will be the, working with increasing agro and food diversity, promoting climate smart agricultural practices and crops. Then we will need to streamline our seed systems for optimal performance. There will be training of farmers on good seed and overall production practices, and again, emphasizing post-harvest and storage technology to reduce loss. And this was also actually emphasized by Ayelu as he was giving his overview on what is happening in Ethiopia. The next slide, please. Okay, if I just zero in a little bit more on the tasks that we're going to be having. So we're going to be selecting smallholder farmers. And in our project, we, of course, promised a minimum of 20 farmers. But as you heard from Ethiopia, there is a possibility to work with even 30 farmers. We're going to be having 2 sites in the countries. There is 4 countries, as you know. But here, just to emphasize, we're going to be starting with a needs assessment. We don't want just to go in and bring our solution. We want to go in and find out what is the need, go back to the drawing board, think what is the solution, and then go back to the farmers together with them, agree on what are the interventions, and then start working with them. Next slide. And oh, sorry, here on the picture, you can see our colleagues in Uganda. In the picture that this, yes, thank you. Our colleagues in Uganda inspecting a farm with a smallholder farmer, trying again to understand what are their challenges so that we can be able to know what to do. So this is actually what we're doing at the moment. The teams are on the ground, visiting the farmers, finding out what is happening. Next slide, please. Here you can see our FPR approach. And what we are saying is we're going to have 3 phases. And as you can see in the 3 phases, you have the first phase is evaluating the proposed interventions. And as I mentioned, these interventions must begin with a needs assessment. And that's what we have been doing in the first 4 months of the project, talking to the farmers, finding out what they need. And together we are discussing and agreeing on what are the possible interventions that should be evaluated in the FPR. And in the first FPR, we will look at the proposed interventions. Second FPR, we will select the best practices. And then in the third one, by the end of the project, we will be showcasing the highest ranking practices. And hopefully by that time, allowing our farmers to adapt and scale up. There will be trainings, and these trainings again will invite not just the 20 farmers, but other farmers will also be invited to also see what is happening. So again, that's why we'll be showcasing what we're doing, and we want to have a larger impact. So even if we're working with 20 farmers or 30 farmers, for example, in Ethiopia, we want to make sure that we can reach other farmers as well. So they will also be invited for the trainings that we will be having. Next slide, please. And just a few words on the needs assessment. I mean, there's several dimensions that can be looked at for each crop. And so the first one, of course, is to check, are we having the right cultivar or the right variety? Do the farmers have access to their best yielding variety or the one that suits the soil or the climatic conditions that they are working with? We're looking at their farming practices. How are they managing the soil? Well, how about water management? How about pests and diseases? How about, do they need to utilize monocropping, intercropping, rotational cropping, looking what is the best farming practice. We're also looking at the seed systems. How are they accessing the seeds? How are they getting affordable seed? Are there any systems that exist on the ground? We're looking at harvest and post-harvest technologies, how to reduce loss, digital technologies. So again, the farmers are getting on the ground, we are having a questionnaire which is covering several aspects, and our experts on the ground know best for each crop what to look for and what to discuss with the farmers. And this will then give us an idea of what are the interventions that we should work with in relation to each crop. Next slide, please. And when we go to task 3.2, we'll be streamlining our seed systems. So we'll identify what are the seed supply channels. We will be mapping them out. We'll identify the suitable cultivars, seed companies, and we will be looking at, do we need to create an informal seed supply system within a certain region, or is there already an existing one? And how can we enhance collaboration between the farmers and the seed supply system? And we will, of course, be looking at upscaling. If we introduce a new variety, for example, new cultivar, we'll be looking at how to upscale that. And of course, that will require training. Could it even be that some of the farmers may be the ones who will be trained as to how to actually produce the seed so that we can have a sustainable way of ensuring that the seeds are available and affordable to the consumers. So we will be establishing or looking at what are the available seed systems, and if they do not exist, we will work towards establishing one. Next slide, please. Okay, and as we are again moving on, we're going to be having trainings. This is going to be the most important part to ensure we document everything that we are doing, all the challenges and all the contingencies that we come up with, all the plans or all the ideas we come up with in terms of how to solve the challenges that the farmers are facing. Document that, but make sure we communicate it back to the farmers. And as I said, this will not be done but for only the 20 farmers or 30, but for the farmers in that area, because we are working with farmer groups, and the groups may have even up to 1,000 farmers, but we cannot work with all of them. But we want to make sure that as many of them have access to the training. So there will be training on soil and water conservation, crop production practices, seed management. There will be training on harvesting and post-harvest technologies, and all these, of course, will be developed as part of a toolbox, which will be available in our innovation platform. And that will, of course, then be available not just within the timelines of the project, but even beyond this project. That is one aspect that we are really looking forward to, that we don't want just to produce good results that sit on a shelf, but we want to make sure that those are utilized in a sustainable way and on a long term. So the farmers will be trained at the FPR sites, and hopefully by the end of the third FPR and the adaptation and scaling up, the farmers will themselves, who have been trained, be able to go to their farms and try to implement what has been learned. Next slide, please. So for the post-harvesting technologies, we are going in again to look at what is happening. In some of the countries, we have missed the planting seasons. So we have to look at the timelines carefully, but we have already agreed that we need to go in and just see what are the farmers doing, how are they storing the seed, how are they storing the grains, what is happening to their products at the present moment, and then looking at are there better or current modern technologies that can be utilized in these areas. We want to look at safety as well. We know mycotoxins, for example, are a challenge, so we want to make sure that we look at safety of our produce. Hello? Is it just me? Yes, thank you. Sorry, I thought there was someone else talking. Okay, so we'll again, we will be looking at training of the farmers on these technologies. But I also want to emphasize again, you heard from Work Package 1 that they will be also looking at training farmers on even the business models that will be developed, because we want to ensure that the farmer also has an idea of what is or how they can add value to what they have. How can they be part of the greater value chain? And also, just to emphasize here, we also want to look at the possibility not just for the local market, but also for the international market. Again, as was emphasized earlier, we want to upscale, make sure that the produce that is, again, the small scale farmers are able to access international markets, which again gives them more access to funds and more access to markets. Next slide, please. I will not I'll talk about this in detail. I think my colleague Ayelu nicely presented what is happening in Ethiopia and what has been done. And again, I just want to ask Ayelu, would you like to say a few words on this? Ayelu? He already presented the areas that we are working in.
Sorry?
Yes. Yes.
I had already presented, so
yes.
I don't have anything to say with it.
Yes, thank you very much. And it was a nice presentation. So we will not go into details as to what is happening in Ethiopia again. The next slide, please. Okay, and here again, just to emphasize what Ayelu had said earlier, the needs assessment has been done, looking at the challenges locally, and we are having a good collaboration between the University of Helsinki and Harare. It has been very fruitful, and at this time, if you give me the next slide, I will ask Kifle if he will just briefly tell us about his work and what we will be doing in Ethiopia. Kifle is at the moment in Ethiopia, actually.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kifle Mariam. I'm a postdoc researcher at University of Helsinki, and I'm co-coordinating work package 3 with Dr. Nagwa. Yes, we have been doing acid and aluminum toxicity stress resistance in Fababin for the last 5 years. As part of my PhD work, I took about 25 genotypes from Ethiopian Research Institute to Helsinki, done greenhouse and pot experiments in under controlled and open condition, and identified outstanding accessions for acid and aluminum toxicity tolerant. And we feel that these accessions or genotypes should be tested at field condition. And the areas we selected for this purpose is Banja district. And in Banja district, the soil pH might range like from 4 to 4.5, and that is very acidic for the production of fababin, because fababin is very sensitive for acidity and also for drought. So we brought about 4 accessions among the tested materials that was tested from Ethiopia and from other parts of the world, but we choose the Ethiopian accession so that we can have easy adaptation in our area. So this will be tested under field condition as part of the FPPR or PVS system of the Harare for demonstration purpose, and maybe selected by the farmers as an outstanding genotypes in the area. And also we strive to see some experimental plots in order to support our basic data that we had in greenhouse and pot experiments. And maybe for next time we might also look for QTLs in the next project research. So this is all about we are doing with fababin, and that is what we are trying to demonstrate in Amhara. Maybe if anything is there, I can be asked.
Yes. Thank you very much, Kifle, for highlighting this work. And I think it's a privilege to move your research from the greenhouse to the ground, and this is going to be excellent. And we have been really grateful to Harare for the fruitful collaboration. They have been hosting Kifle at the moment, and this has been excellent. And we're looking forward to this work together. Next slide, please. Okay, that was my last slide. Thank you for your attention. And here you can see all the collaborators that we're working with from each of the countries. And again, thank you to Alemu and Harare for this opportunity to share our work. Thank you.